Welcome back, everybody, to the Think and Grow podcasts with your hosts, Dr. Z
and Professor P.
Today, we have the opportunity to learn all about pet stuff with our guest, Sean Jones, who I'm thinking he can elaborate on this, but I'm thinking that he's like, you know what? The heck with this stuff. I've been a pet lover all my life, and I'm going to kick all this other stuff to the curb, and I'm going to live and monetize my passion. Sean, tell us whatever you want to start with.
Okay. So I'm Sean Jones, and I've had a very wide variety of careers in my time. I started my career actually as a psychotherapist, so went on for my master's and finished a good portion of my PhD, but didn't want to do the rest of the dissertation. But I practiced psychotherapy and I should say I've been a psychotherapist for over 30 years.
Wow.
Aside from any of the other careers that I pursued, I've always had a side practice, but I practiced full time for about 15 years. Mm-hmm. And from there, I actually got recruited by the FBI, and I was a special agent with the FBI for a while. Kind of happened on a whim because I heard it was really competitive to apply. Probably one of the more boring jobs I've ever had in my life. It was pre 9/11. I went back to business school and got my MBA. Mm-hmm. And I had, through psychotherapy and opening up multiple practices, I got connected with a lot of healthcare companies, managed care companies. And my last job that I had before I went into the pet business, I was chief operating officer for United Healthcare in Nebraska.
Before you became unemployable.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. I literally, now as an entrepreneur, I've actually not had a paycheck in over 7 years.
Wow.
My wife has. So we've always had a passion for pet nutrition, passion for dogs and cats. Mm-hmm. And my wife's a retired teacher, and we opened up a very small pet store in 2016. And it was about 900 square feet, so very small, not much bigger than a walk-in closet. And I really thought my wife would run the store and I'd have to get a job or do some consulting or something. And it really grew, and we expanded that store considerably. We currently are in the middle of opening up our third store.
Nice.
Millions of dollars in revenue. And we're also always making pet treats in the back of our store. And in 2020, we started selling them to other stores. Mm. And in 2021, we moved into its own production facility in about 3,000 square foot place. And in this short period of time, here we are in 2023, we just moved into a 14,000 square foot facility for making pet food and treats. And if someone told me 30 years ago that this is where my career was going to go, and so I was up at 3 a.m. Today, not for any reason other than I was really excited to get up and go to work. And
Nice.
I have to say that without cliche, every single day in the pet industry, my worst day doing this is better than my best day in any job I've ever done in my life.
That is freaking awesome.
That is amazing. Yeah, if I could ask the question, so were you a profiler for the FBI? Was that related to your? It wasn't.
No, I entered in on what's called the diversified program. I did spend some time with doing some behavioral health, and I worked with the critical incident response group for a while, but just a field agent. I was young, so there's not a lot of specialty that would come with that.
I see.
Like I said, it was pretty boring.
Pretty boring. And then what was the transition like from going to owning a pet store? You said you got your MBA and you had your private practice as a psychotherapist. And then how did the pet store come into play?
So, I mean, it's not a secret now, but I really I really enjoyed most of my time working in managed care because I think we did a lot of good for the members that we were serving.
Mm-hmm.
But in my last job, it was, and this was not just behavioral health, it was all medical. And I really, really, really didn't like my job. Got paid really well. Any logical person would say I was very unwise to leave a job like that.
Yeah.
And open up a pet store. But it was the best thing and my wife would say the same thing. She's absolutely 100% all in. We were both up at 3.
I got a quick question. Just popped in my head here. So I was thinking a lot of these positions like Dr. Z here, she's a forensic pathologist. That comes with a lot of stress. I'm imagining the job you were doing came with a lot of stress. How would you compare your stress level in that career to what you're doing with your passion, which is building out this incredible pet business?
So it's a different type of stress.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have to say for the last 6 years, it hasn't been incredibly stressful. It's taken a lot of energy and a lot of effort and dedication. But it doesn't feel like work. This last year, because of our expansion, was really first of all, it was the first time we've ever been in debt. So that's part of it. But I think, being just what I've done in my career now, we're building out a facility. We're working on SQF certification, which is like one of the highest food preparation and facility certifications that you can get. There's just a lot. So it's a different type of stress, but it's not a loathing stress, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Sounds like you're hitting the pillow pretty good at night and falling off fairly quickly.
Yeah. The 4 hours of sleep that I usually get have been pretty sound. Yeah.
So, what have you always had pets? And is that kind of what drove your interest in the nutrition side and the food side of it?
Yeah, always have had pets. My grandparents were breeders. My parents were breeders. And the pet industry it's people really don't realize the pet industry. It's a $200 billion industry, but Mars and Nestle, the two candy bar companies, they literally make 92% of all the pet products on the market today. And Mars, the candy bar company, actually owns more than 50% of all the vet practices in the U.S.
Wow.
So, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I know on the medical side, the level that pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies influence education in our medical system. And it's multiplied with veterinarians. Again, incredibly smart people. But I know a lot of physicians that weren't prepared for the influence that industry has on just their education and how they practice. And it's even more so in the pet industry. So we're considered to be more alternative and holistic than a PetSmart, a Petco, or an average pet store. And I think because of that, it's brought us great success, because I think overall the culture that we're living in is welcoming those. I don't even like saying it's alternative care. We really promote real food for cats and dogs, and that's not really alternative. So
did you do a lot of research and preparation before you made this leap of faith? Did you see that you had a niche that you could? Were you innovative where you could see that, hey, there's a space here that's, a blue ocean, right? That's nobody's even looking at it. What was your process in getting ready to launch and going, hey, where did the belief come from that says we can do this as a business?
That's a good question, because I think that's also been a differentiator in our success. Is I bought a lot of consulting information. We did a lot of our own research. We knew that we were going to enter in the fastest growing segment of the pet industry. And for example, I had data on in different geographic locations of, how large the lot size are, median income. But one of the things I looked at is how many invisible fences were in an area. So that helped me calculate how many large dogs and large yards they were. Again, large dogs eat a lot more.
Yeah.
So from a revenue standpoint, but my wife and I we have multiple certifications in pet nutrition, raw feeding, herbalism. We're always learning. And I think in any profession, at that moment where you're not learning anymore, you're not serving
Right.
the membership or the clients that you think that you care about. So
Now you got your MBA. I mean, there's a lot of entrepreneurs who don't go that route. But did you get it in anticipation of owning a store, or was it more for your psychotherapy practice?
So, I mean, a couple things drove that. The first one was owning psychotherapy clinics. You don't get hardly any training in business in graduate school.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I started to work for managed care companies, and that seemed like I was inadequately prepared to do that. So I thought I would go back to school, and I learned a tremendous amount doing that. But I think a lot of times you go into an MBA program and you learn a lot of stuff, but you don't have the place to apply it. And I was lucky enough that like every single thing that I was doing in my MBA program, I was able to apply it the next day. I was deep into business, working for managed care companies, and it's most of my counterparts in the coursework. I was like, they were in management jobs maybe, but I had P&L responsibility for $1 billion, so I had departments that I was learning about, and so I'm so glad that I did it, and I think it's made being an entrepreneur a little easier. I certainly have a different perspective. I try to stay really close with others, non-competitive stores similar to ours in different parts of the country. And I do have a little bit different perspective because I know, we're up against Mars and Nestle and PetSmart and Petco. And I think unless you've worked in those industries, you don't realize the magnitude of their capabilities. And just frankly, they're in it as a business rather than a passion like we are.
Right.
So you actually got your MBA because of the job. So you got your management position before you had the MBA. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I probably didn't need the MBA. I did it because I felt like I wasn't prepared for what I was doing. And I feel that every day. I always assume I'm the dumbest person in the room, and I ask lots of questions. Again, I think that's something that contributes to overall success. So when you assume you're the dumbest person and you're taking input from everyone and just trying to make informed decisions. So,
yeah, who am I going to learn from today?
Yeah.
Right. Having that humbleness, not getting that head about yay big. Right. So
yeah, and I know the people that I work with, they at least know me well enough now that everything that they present to me, they're going to get at least 5 questions about it.
Wow.
Literally.
Oh, here comes the question, man, everybody.
Yeah.
So share with us, even though you did. I'm sorry, what?
My wife sometimes says I should keep those questions to myself.
So sounds like you guys did a lot of due diligence, did a lot of preparation. As we all know, all of us that are entrepreneurs, no matter how hard you prepare and how ready you think you are and this, that, and the other, you hire coaches, you do whatever to really, increase the probability of your success. Share with our listeners some of the early pitfalls that you experienced that really helped you to congrats, because you've surpassed that magic number, right, of 5,000, 5 years of being in business. They always say, most businesses fail within the first years. You're on year 7 now, right?
Yeah. So I think, we actually talk about this a lot. I think the first thing is we had a lot of contingency plans right from the beginning. We actually planned to fail, or what if this fails? Right. Then we basically looked at the industry and we wanted to position ourselves with diversity right from the beginning, which almost anyone advising an entrepreneur would say you stay focused on what you're good at and you stay focused on who you are and what you do. And right. we kind of did the opposite of that. We were really prepared to we went into everything, and we do go into everything with an exit plan. But I think it's like a Jesse Cole thing where, you try things out. And I think we've tried out a million different things, and we stick with what's been working. So I think that's been really successful. The other thing, even coming from big industry, is, and I can't emphasize this enough, is we did not want to incur any significant debt. If you look at our store, if you wanted to start a store like ours, you probably have to buy a couple $100,000 in fixtures.
Wow.
There's very little in our store that I didn't buy at an auction.
Wow.
So we genuinely bootstrapped starting our business, so we didn't have that burden of having a loan hanging over our head. The loans we have now are for brand new machines that you can't buy used or buy, secondhand or build yourself. So we really bootstrapped everything, and I did that even with therapy clinics. We started buying houses and converting them into clinics, and that was a lot. I mean, we were buying houses for basically our the value of the house was worth what 1 year's lease would be in a professional building. So I can't emphasize that enough. Bootstrapping, and there's volumes of books and research that's been done on bootstrapping, but you hardly ever see it applied.
Because you were bootstrapping, then one of the pitfalls, I guess, of that is not being able to meet the demand. And so you said you kind of took off fairly quickly, and then able to meet the demand.
We took off very quickly. We've outgrown every single facility that we've been in, and within a year. Wow. Our clients don't seem to mind that. We're at a point now. So just the opposite of where we've been for 7 years, the facility that we're moving in now is actually too big for what we need. But I guarantee you a year from now, it'll be the right size, and we'll be ready to expand again. So we've made plenty of mistakes, but I think we've been diversified of enough to say, okay, that didn't work. We're going to go in the other direction. It didn't cost us much to make that mistake. But we really, I like that whole thing with Jesse Cole of saying, he's like, we try something new every day.
Yeah.
And if there's not a lot of cost to it, and you may look goofy for a while or didn't fit, but we do try something every day. I'll give you an example. For fun, we started making freeze-dried donuts for cats and dogs made out of chicken and produce. Incredibly expensive. We thought we'd have a small handful of customers that would find them cute and appropriate for their dogs. They're $7 a piece. And we've sold tens of thousands of them. Again, wow. We never thought that would take off, but we just thought, hey, this was kind of a cool thing, fun thing to do. So we try to experiment almost every day with doing something. And a lot of times it doesn't work, and I end up bringing it home and feeding it to my dogs.
Tell us about, you were talking about the growth factor. We've been growing. Sounds like you've been growing exponentially. What are some of the challenges you can share with our listeners that when you do start to take off and grow, what are some of the things that really stand out that they will need to be aware of?
Well, I mean, right now it's it's still a weird time being able to actually get things. That's why auctions have been great, because you bid on it and you go pick it up. Right. But for example, we have a very large freeze drying machine that hopefully it's still delayed, but hopefully we're going to have it in May or June. So we ordered that in September of 22. So, and the big problem is you have to pay for it right away. So if you're financing something, so we're basically making payments on something that, we weren't going to have for 9 months.
Non-performing asset.
Right. But we've been seeing that more and more is, shortages. I mean, even containers that we put some of our products in, all of a sudden they're not available. Which it may or may not cause disruptions, but the machine thing, if a part breaks, I think all industries are potentially impacted by that.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to mitigate some of the equipment that we bought by buying spare parts ahead of time. We've been pretty diligent in looking at, okay, what's the lifespan of certain parts and machines so we don't ever get stuck. Again, it's expensive, right, to have that level of redundancy in your system. But we were like, well, what is the cost of buying it now versus the cost of not having it for 2 or 3 months? So we try to plan as much as we can. We're all really busy, and I'm a little concerned with the rate, just the pace that we're keeping now, that we're not being as disciplined in planning and creating contingencies for the future. So that's what keeps me up at night when I don't sleep.
Expect there to be surprises, right? It's kind of like for the people that everybody, in my opinion, will be less stressed out on a personal level if they've got a emergency fund, so that when these big ticket things blow up in your face, they don't have to freak out and go, how am I going to get that? Well, the car transmission blows up or whatever, something big, and they don't have that. It sounds like that would be a good thing in business too, to have that, that money pile that's reserve.
Yeah. And that's not always it's sometimes difficult to accumulate or set aside. Right. Or you look at, for example, there's some machines that we could buy that are a whole lot cheaper. But when they break down, you're not going to be able to get them fixed ever. So we just try to look ahead a little bit. I think that's another thing with some of my team is they're really, just now realizing that my head is 5 years down the road right now.
Yeah.
And they don't really, it's like, well, we're going to need money to expand. So we need to save that, where they're like, well, they have access. We're a pretty transparent company. And they're just like, well, why, you got all this money right now. Why don't you spend it on this? And I was like, well, we don't need a new forklift right now.
Yeah.
How has this being in business changed you, or how have you grown personally?
I think in my previous role, one of the things I really didn't like about it was there was no work-life balance. And in a way, I put in way more hours than I do now. But I think the quality time, and I tell this to everybody I know, it's like, when you're dealing with a difficult person, we have some difficult customers, not a lot of them. I tell them, it's like, just realize that person that you're really getting all wound up about, it's like they don't exist anywhere else in your life. You're dealing with them at a pet store, at a pet plant. It was like, you're going to go home tonight and you just be 100% with your family or 100% doing something else. And don't let that stuff, fade into other parts of your life. And I've been pretty good. I mean, I have 6 grandchildren. It was actually part of the reason why. So my last job was in Nebraska. Home is Wisconsin. And part of us coming back here was 3 of our girls were all getting married within 18 months of each other.
Wow.
We wanted to be here as they started their families. And that is the neat thing. So now we have these 6 grandchildren and that have come down the road in the 7 years. And it's just great to spend time with them. Again, we're all very, very busy, but sometimes now they hang out at the pet store. Nice.
Too bad there's not 2 of you, right? Sometimes you could really use to have another you.
Yeah. And that's a good point, is we really, we haven't been good about going on vacation. So that's something that maybe will come on. But on the other hand, I traveled to 2 cities every week for my last job. So the idea of going somewhere, my wife feels a little different about it, but on the other hand, I'm headed to Florida to a trade show for a week next week. So
yeah, Zelda and we like to do a lot of, when we go somewhere, let's go someplace. Like, for example, we went to visit her sister out in the San Francisco area, and Brendan Burchard was there. So, all right, we'll go visit Brendan.
Yeah. And I mean, that is so important, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm business. I bet you I've been to San Francisco dozens of times. In my lifetime, I've never seen the Golden Gate Bridge.
Really?
I've always been there on business, and I've never seen the bridge. I've never done anything in San Francisco other than go to meetings that were usually pretty close to the airport.
That's funny. That reminds me, I lived in Phoenix, Arizona for many years, Las Vegas. And you know what's close by to there? The Grand Canyon. And for 10 years, I never went. And then finally, Zelda and I in our travels went. After I didn't even live there anymore, and I could have drove over there, right?
Right. And it's only the biggest landmark on the planet, right?
Right.
Nice. So who are some of the people that motivated or mentored you? You said you had family members who own businesses growing up. Was that a big influencer, you think, for you?
Probably not, because maybe I was too immature to really recognize what that meant. So my undergrad's in psychology and religion, and I had a professor, Wendell Bean, and he used to ask these rhetorical questions of like, what is your frame of reference and what is your center of relativity? And he said, those are the only two things that matter in your life. And it's a rhetorical question. So it's something that I've always tried to answer is, whenever I feel like I was going off path, I was like, really, what is this whole world in reference to? And, what does anything mean to compare it to my family, or, whatever is the most important thing to you. And I always try to keep that perspective is, no matter what is happening and I've done, with the FBI and with, I used to volunteer with the Red Cross, and I was actually deployed to Kosovo. You see total, genocide and devastation. Wow. And, and then you call home, and the Red Cross talks about this all the time. You call home and the closed washing machines overflowing.
Yeah.
Big deal. There's a grave here of, 10,000 women and children.
Wow.
Everything is relative.
Yeah.
And I always think no matter how bad your business is going or something is happening, if you could just keep that perspective of, there's something much larger out there. Again, when you're going through it, it's one thing, but it always has to be relative to something, your broader perspective of what the meaning of life is or something like that.
Yeah. Talk about the power of belief. You're doing all this due diligence. You're working together with your wife, which is awesome because that's a strength that Zelda and I have. We've both gone through coach training, so we can be feeding off of one another and talking about everything that we're experiencing in that world. But talk about the belief, the power of that belief. There's a book, The Magic of Believing, that my mom's like, you got to read this book. It's really good. And we talk about that quite frequently on how powerful it is to truly, I have a story, won't share here, but I walked away from this event and I was like, you know what? I truly believe I can do this. So share with our listeners some of the things that came up and you're like, gee, I don't quite know just yet, but I believe that, and I believe this, and I believe that.
Well, and again, this isn't that deep, but one of the things we learned, we were kind of doing our planning for our stores, and we did want to diversify, and we wanted to be able to do what we needed to do for our business to be successful. But we reflect on this all the time. We used to spend, a certain percentage of our revenue on advertising or marketing. And we quickly realized that every single penny we put into advertising and marketing was a relative waste. Right. Because the reason why our stores were successful is because of our passion and what we believe about pets and nutrition. And it's really interesting. The more, for example, having these stores now, when my wife and I are in the stores, we always sell 20% more that day if we're in the store. versus if it's one of our employees, and not knocking on them.
Right.
They do a great job, but it's our passion.
Right.
And we sometimes joke that our stores are the Cheers of pet stores. We know everyone's name. We know at least I know the dogs' names. We have a very personal connection to a good portion of our customers. And we try to talk to our customers. And sometimes I look at our pet store and I compare it to other ones. And it's like, really, what is the difference? And sometimes I say, part of it is our employees have to look up from their cell phones when someone walks in the door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We are really, really passionate about connecting with people when they come in, connecting with their dogs. And because we're passionate about nutrition. Mm-hmm. And again, we kind of meet them where they're at as far as how they want to treat their animals.
Yeah.
But so many people come in and their animals are having some sort of medical condition. Mm. And we just have a little conversation with them. And we actually are one of our best marketing tools right now is we have a business card that is a reference to a documentary on pet food called Pet Fooled. And you can find it on Amazon Prime. You can find it on Netflix or wherever. But it's just a documentary about pet food. And we usually, we talk a lot with everyone that comes in the stores about, well, maybe some of the problems he has related to the food. And without trying to totally villainize some of these other big companies, we'll say, there's a lot of power in eating real food. Right. I always say sometimes what we're telling people to do is contrary to veterinarians, but it seems like even the worst physician on the planet, and by process elimination, they're out there somewhere, right? Yeah. They would tell the three of us and anyone listening to eat more real whole foods and less processed food.
Right.
Whereas 2/3 of the veterinarians have been trained that dogs should only, or cats and dogs should only eat processed food, and real food might be dangerous. Right. It's like, there's not a kibble dispenser in the forest. So we just kind of have those conversations with people. And if they want to keep on feeding, what they are, we recommend some supplements, or we recommend something that could potentially help them. And then when it works, they're a client for life.
Yeah. We are what we eat, pets included. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. If you help somebody, they're going to come back.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was what my other question was. How do you maintain kind of this competitive edge? Because, as soon as Mars or whatever, finds out that you're being successful in this holistic health market for pets, they're going to come out with their alternative treats or, healthy treat and try to probably grab a piece of the market,
And they've been buying up some of the companies. I think the comfortable part for us is even the food that we make is sold at a lot lower margin than the stuff a Mars or Nestle would demand making. Again, they're having to provide a dividend to their stockholders. So and I tell a lot of people, I said, per pound, if you're not feeding your dog the price per pound that you would buy meat in the grocery store, meat or produce in the grocery store for, it's you're probably not feeding what you think you are.
Yeah.
Because the cost of food, real food is food. And the industry, the food is so processed and people also don't even think about, what happened to all the chickens that were destroyed because of the potential bird flu? I guarantee they were all made into pet food. If something is sitting on a dock somewhere and it spoils and it's condemned by the FDA or the USDA, that gets made into pet food.
Yeah.
A dead or diseased animal on a farm, that gets made into pet food. It's allowed. And I think there's such issues in our own food supply chain that we don't know. But in the pet industry, there's really, sometimes people feel real good. They'll read their packaging. You're feeding grass-fed beef, or it says that this is sustainably sourced or responsibly sourced or upcycled. And what that means is that you're feeding your animal something that would have otherwise ended up in a garbage dump. And I'm sorry, my cats and dogs are not garbage dumps. And I certainly wouldn't, if I wouldn't feed it to my kids, I'm not going to feed it to my pets.
Even if it's
so I'm very passionate.
even if it's grass fed, you said grass fed beef.
Yeah, but it's grass fed and diseased, or dying, or maybe it says beef, but they don't tell you what part of the animal it was. In the industry, you can call something chicken, and it could literally be feathers because it came from a chicken.
Wow.
There are actually foods, and I won't call them out, but there are some pet foods on the market that I certainly wouldn't recommend anyone with an compromised immune system, or a pregnant woman, or a child to even hold in the palm of their hand. Because there's a lot of ingredients on the label there's a lot of ingredients in the product that they're not required to put on the label.
Mm.
Oh.
Unlike the human food industry.
Yeah.
So that's where our passion is. And we'll kind of share a little bit at a time with our customers because we don't want to gross them out.
Yeah.
But we sincerely just we call ourselves informed pet parents.
Yeah.
We share it.
Yeah, that's definitely you guys' superpower, is the sincerity, the passion, and you're walking the walk and talking the talk, and you're taking action. You're making all these healthy products. This business, I am imagining, is going to blow up for you guys.
Yeah, and other people in our space too. And I have to say, we absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Like I said, my eyes pop open at 3 a.m. and it's like, let's go to work. Probably not good for me, but I've never felt that before in anything else we've done that I've done.
Yeah, you're like, vacation, honey. What do we need to go on vacation for? I'm on vacation every day.
I get to spend time with my grandchildren and our dogs, and that's my frame of reference or center of relativity.
Yeah, how many vacations can you go on, and eventually that gets stale, right? Yeah,
and I have a different perspective. I used to be a big scuba diver, and I've been scuba diving on 5 of the 7 continents.
Wow.
So, and I used to travel to 2 cities every week for decades. So, I've gone to a lot of places, and there's no place like home. It's like, if you could live anywhere you wanted, you go back to Wisconsin. I was like, that's where my family is.
Yeah. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talk about some of the things that you've done that come to mind for you, that when you do get into stressful situations, that help you to relieve that stress, and some of the coping mechanisms. I mean, you're a psychotherapist. You're probably way ahead of the curve on this compared to the average person like me, who's always looking for help anytime a trauma pops up.
Well, and I don't know if it's really about being a psychotherapist, because stress is stress, right? And you fall into patterns. For us, again, and you're catching me at literally the most stressful time in the history of our business.
Wow.
To give you a perspective, we are making financial commitments relative to, we don't have enough sales to meet those commitments for what we're doing right now. So that's a financial risk. And you going back to having faith or believing that everything is going to work. Mm-hmm. We're going to go to this trade show and we're probably going to come back just fine. Mm-hmm. If we don't come back for that trade show, we have other revenue streams that we're going to have to tap into that we didn't really want to. Mm-hmm. Again, it's not the quality of food that we want to make. So it's incredibly stressful. Then when you hear that there's delays on some of the machines, the installation of, we're building out a facility right now and we're way behind. Mm. There's not one thing that's being delivered on time or when it was said to be there.
Yeah, that's the landscape right now, right? I mean, it's still, we're coming out of that COVID and everything is still messed up. And now you got people that don't want to work and all of that.
Yeah. And our team, we're totally blessed, and we don't pay well. I think we have a good team of people right now they see the future of where we're headed, and they know that we will take care of, our team when we can take care of them.
Yeah.
We're very transparent with, all of our numbers and everything. But for example, my wife and I mean, there's just multiple crises. We have 2 freezers that just died, and they're renting a reefer truck right now, so put some stuff to take it over to one of our other facilities. There's always some sort of crisis. And we have a good enough team where they're like, hey, Sean has this podcast scheduled. As soon as he's done, he's going to come and help us. But we're always looking out for each other. If you had to, take your kid to the doctor or anything, we're all going to pitch in. We're all going to be there for each other. But even tonight, it was like, that's the other thing. I mean, not only do we get up in 3 a.m, we probably work until 10 midnight every night. But tonight we're going to go to dinner with my sister-in-law and brother-in-law. Take the night off. Yeah, because they thought maybe we were abducted by aliens and have disappeared. So we were going to do something because we said, that's really important.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we do. I think both my wife and I are really good at separating those stresses from other parts of our life, and it's not always easy to do. But my wife and I, we look at it as like, we make jokes, but it's like, I hope we don't end up living in this new warehouse that we're leasing. And I always joke, it's like, I said, we should probably put a shower in just in case, and you think that would terrify her, but she's all in. It's like, we know this is our passion. This is where we're headed. The only reason we wouldn't do that is, first of all, it's probably illegal, but what would we do with our dogs, So,
yeah.
So we really, it's a really stressful time. And I don't think, if you can go into being an entrepreneur without realizing that that's the level of risk. And it's like Pat Miller, he said, you can flip a coin, whether you'll be successful or not. And you could have all the right stuff. You could do all the right things. It could be the right time. And still just by, whatever happens in the universe.
A catastrophic event could occur. And now you're, like what I was talking about earlier about the surprise factor, right? Yeah. Now what do we do?
Who would ever thought COVID was going to happen?
Right.
We were literally opening, we signed the lease a while back, but our lease began March of 2020 in our second location. And we literally thought we were done.
Wow.
You sign a 5-year lease, and those organizations and those strip malls are not forgiving. We thought we were done. And
why? What made you think you were done?
Well, I mean, we were blessed that we were essential. And it turned out people used to come just to socialize at the pet store because they couldn't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
But we had just opened, and, you have all that hanging over your head of, the costs of everything you just bought for the store. You stocked an entire store. You have a lot of rent. You're paying staff. Our utility. I mean, all these things accumulating. And we were just, I guess we were lucky we were essential.
Yeah.
But any other business, it could have been very devastating.
Yeah. Maybe we bit off a little too much here.
Yeah. Yeah. And we take those risks. We're right on the razor's edge a lot of the time. But, maybe our downfall was we really don't stop either. It's like, but we've been turning down business on the pet food end for about 2 years. And so now we've taken the leap, and we know, we took the leap at the end of last year. So a lot of people don't want to do business at the end of the year.
Yeah.
They may not do business at the beginning of the year. So it's like, okay, where are all these people? So, but we really try to separate those stresses.
You weathered the storm, it sounds like.
Yeah. And we always say, tomorrow there's going to be another crisis.
Yeah. Be ready.
Yep. There's going to be another one. And that's what we do. And if there's not a crisis, it seems like that's the moment where we're making some progress. So, because we don't have to focus on that crisis. But we just love every single minute of it, but it's not for the faint of heart.
Nice. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to wind it down and cut this off within the next several minutes. Dr. Z, do you want to lead us to that exit door with a final question or parting thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you just dropped so many great gems here, about maintaining a positive outlook, anticipating crises. I think it's good to always consider that, even though you don't want to focus all your energy and time on that, definitely that's a good thing. Yeah. So do you have any, tips or advice for people that are just getting started out, because you have survived through, some significant trials maybe, and then now, like you said, you're doing this huge build out in anticipation of something, who knows what could happen with that, So somebody who's just starting out in business, what is the key factor you think that would help them to be more resilient?
I think the big thing is not necessarily all the contingencies, but is to ask a lot of questions. And you can follow your gut and let that be, your guiding light. But yeah. I think getting input from a lot of different perspectives, I think and then just trying to use that to make some decisions. I use a very complex model for making all of our decisions, and really look at, what are alternatives, what are the risks that come with all the decisions. But I think that's the biggest thing, is just answering questions or asking questions, and know how to ask deep questions. Because with those questions will come all the potential for crisis or downsides and upsides, and being as well informed as possible.
That's
definitely the questions are the most powerful thing. If you've ever read the book, The One Thing, it talks about that.
Yeah, and some people feel embarrassed or that they should know it all. And I think that can also be detrimental to have that type of attitude, having more of a growth mindset instead of a fixed mindset.
I mean, I agree. And I don't mean that sarcastically. I literally always assume that I'm the least informed person in the room. Yeah. And I didn't say the dumbest person in the room, but I really believe that, because, there's so much out there. And then the other thing too, is just because you get an answer from somebody that seems to be an authority or an expert, it doesn't mean they're right. Right. I can tell you that our stores, we have done a lot of the distributors that we work with. They'll provide us with some pretty high level consulting firms. And we've done 180-degree opposite of what some of those firms have recommended to us.
Because it just didn't feel right, or whatever.
Well, for example, they were telling us the trend is small dogs. And that's true in metropolitan areas, but not true in New Berlin and Brookfield.
Yeah, they don't know your market space.
Right. And it was like, don't give me, some generic, I spent a lot of time. I taught research design. So I dig into the data and the sources, and it's like, well, where did that data come from? And if the person doesn't know where that statistic came from, stop talking to them.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I appreciate, man, you dropped some gems here. I really do appreciate your insight and your input, because you're right. I think it's important to look at things from multiple sides, and you really are. You've given some great examples of why that's important and how to go about doing that. So, yeah, I really appreciate it.
It's not going to hurt you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, all right. I think that's a good place to leave it. We want to thank you again for coming on. I look forward to meeting you in person one day. Maybe we could hook up for coffee and come check out the facility, because I love doing that kind of stuff. I'm a very curious person. I've been blessed with that boy wonder kind of thing where I'm just, sometimes it gets me in trouble, but just having that curiosity is it's a blessing, right?
Oh yeah. And having curiosity, you sometimes, even if it's not in your industry, you can look at certain benchmarks and apply it to other industries. I think that's really important too. So we'd be more than happy to do that.
Awesome. Dr. Z, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, just thank you for coming, and yeah, we wish you well on this new venture.
Can I plug our companies?
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. Go for it.
All right. So our pet stores are called What's in the Bowl Pet Shops, and we have locations in New Berlin, Brookfield, and Wales, Wisconsin. And then our pet food company is called Raw Dog Barkery, and you can find that at www.rawdogbarkery, not bakery, barkery.com.
Nice.
And then our parent company for that, because we actually make products for about 20 other companies, is Foodynamics. So Foodynamics with 1D.
Nice.
Foodynamics.com.
Sounds like you love to put the play on words.
Yeah.
Well, the domain name for Food Dynamics was $7,500, and I got Dynamics for $11.
Okay, and I think you left out one thing. I saw something about a book that's going to be coming out soon.
Yeah, I'm procrastinating on that a little bit, but so for the last 8 years, I've been doing a lecture called Exploring Cat and Dog Nutrition, and during the pandemic, we converted it to a podcast. And then the book is finished. We just have to do the publishing part of it, but it's the website for that is exploringcatanddognutrition.com.
And when can we expect to see that? Because I want to read it. I'm a book guy.
I'm hoping in October.
Okay.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah.
But we don't have any commitments to that. It's part of just having enough time to get our ducks in a row.
Sounds like a definite maybe.
Definite maybe.
Excellent.
All right. There is a great book that's probably a whole lot better than anything that I'm going to do. It's called The Forever Dog, foreverdog.com by Dr. Karen Becker and Rodney Habib.
Nice.
Okay. Have to check those out.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Professor P, as always.
Thank you in advance.
Just thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing. Yeah. Just thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing. Yeah. Yeah, we're thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing. Yeah. We're thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing and learning and knowing. Yeah. We're thinking and growing and learning and knowing and thinking and growing